Josh Fenton with Saul Kaplan, Mr. Innovation, head of the chief catalyst over at the Business Innovation Factory, and I also want to thank our friends at Deepwater Wind for all their support. All right, Saul.
Hey, Josh.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Your friend got elected to be the mayor out in...
So excited for Alan Weber. He's
co-founder
of Fast Company,
yeah.
Been a longtime friend, been to our summit many
We interviewed
times,
him, Kate interviewed him.
including last year, where he challenged all of us to run for office, to get involved civically. And it was that week that he was at our summit that he learned that the incumbent mayor in Santa Fe, New Mexico, he would never have run against him,
Yeah.
Same party, actually decided not to run again. And while he was with us here in Providence, he got encouragement from 500 innovation junkies from around the world sitting here at Trinity Rep, saying, "Run, Alan, run." He ran an incredible campaign. And don't you know, last week the election was held and he won. Interesting election, because it was one of the few places in the country that does this voting where you rank your votes. So you don't just vote for one, you vote 1 through X and you rank them. And then what happens is, if nobody has a plurality, right, what you end up doing is you take the lowest vote getter and you redistribute the second place votes until there's a winner. It took 4 rounds. It took 4 rounds, but Alan came out on top, and I believe either yesterday or today was sworn in as the new mayor of Santa Fe, New Mexico. We need more leaders like Alan. Incredible story. First time elected to office. Could not be more excited.
A pro politician, though. I think when he did the interview with news editor Kate Nagel, he did wear a Boston Red Sox hat, if I remember correctly, just to show the hometown support.
Yeah, he's a special leader, and take a look at what he's going to do down in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I know I'll be down there to visit him, and we'll get him back up here to Rhode Island as well. Great.
Let's talk about snow. Is there a better way to deal with snow from an innovation standpoint than the chaotic way we seem to deal with snow here in Rhode Island?
Well, the last 2 times I was clairvoyant and was out of the state and got credit for my really great planning skills, and this time not so lucky. I'm here, we're hunkered down. We'll see. Already people are canceling meetings. I don't know whether it's real or not, but
we're going to get a big storm.
It's going to happen.
Yeah. Right. We in John Giorgi we trust. John Giorgi is also, unlike some of the younger brethren on the television, is very conservative about overinflating snow prediction, and his missive today that's posted on GoLocal lends one to believe that this is a minimum of 8 inches and could be 18 to 20 inches.
So I should leave here and get provisions.
You should leave here and get provisions immediately. Yes, right.
Okay.
Or you guys can slog over and knock on our door, and we will allow you in.
There you go. You'll share. You'll share.
Yeah, we will absolutely share across the board. How are we doing in Rhode Island from an innovation standpoint? Let me give you some numbers. Okay. Jobs numbers came out for the month of January, and we lost 200 jobs in Rhode Island. Jobs numbers came out for February at the national level, and the country had a 1.5-year high, adding 313,000 jobs. We don't have the Rhode Island breakout yet. Rhode Island could have had a growth month. The rest of the country seems to be embracing a positive economy right now, and here in Rhode Island, a number of polls, including the one we did in the fall and others, are showing that the majority of Rhode Islanders think we're still on the wrong track. What is this disconnect between the nation's economy and perspective and Rhode Island's economy and perspective?
Well, first of all, let's talk about where we are in the cycle, and then I'll relate it to the rest of the country.
Right.
If you ask economists, they'll tell you we're pretty close to full employment, both here in Rhode Island and so looking at the total number of jobs, looking at the unemployment rate is not the right measure, right? Right now, we're in a cycle where a lot of people are employed. The problem is that they're not employed in ways that either produce the wages necessary to live in a higher cost place in the country or represent a job ladder that they can see a positive future, to increase the wage levels that you certainly need everywhere in the country, but here in New England,
Right.
For sure. So the first thing is we're at the top of that cycle right now, although the narrative, and our rhetoric as we head into silly season suggests otherwise. But that's the truth.
Yeah.
Now the question becomes, how do we stack up to other places in the country? And I think this part of the Rhode Island narrative that says we're usually the first one in and the last one out of every economic cycle has really hurt us. We need.
But that's not God's will.
Right.
I mean, that may be historical or claim to be historical, but it's not a mandate from God.
Is it fatalistic?
Right? Yeah, I mean, it seems to be. Gary would come here and say that. If we called Len Ladaro, he'd say that. If we talked to
of course not.
We're allowed to break that cycle.
Yes, we are.
And improve the economy to a point, which is really the genesis of my question.
Yes,
which
of course. Yeah. So how do we get out of that cycle? And so the way you get out of that cycle is you don't get out of that cycle in 4 and 6 months, right? You don't even get out of that cycle in a single political cycle.
No.
It is a structural. You have to transform this economy and put us on the path to that.
But we haven't had any governors say, I support a stagnant economy. We haven't had any governors say, I like the fact that we're last into recovery and first out of recovery.
Right.
So,
it's harder.
By the way, you look at their resumes, they're all fairly educated men. Don Kachiri, Lincoln Allman, Bruce Sunland, woman now, but these predecessors were all men.
Right.
There seems to be something that we need to.
Well, we need to change the game.
Right.
We need to, politicians love to take credit when the economy is on the upswing, and they get blamed, when it's on the downswing. And the truth is, most of this is driven through macro economy and what happens nationally. Some of it is in our control.
Yeah.
And it's the way we position our own economy, the conditions here, how we put ourselves on a path to create better, higher wage jobs. It's how we fix our education and workforce development systems. So we're creating the workforce that can do those jobs. You don't turn that on a dime. You do that over a period of time by being really clear what's the vision of the kind of economy we can have here, being honest about where we are today and what it takes to get from A to B. That puts us on a sustainable path that transcends any one political cycle. That is so easy for me to stand here and say, and so hard for a politician to do because they're worried about the next election and all the folks that are trying to unseat them and to paint a different picture. Right?
And either in fairness to the governor or to blame the governor, I'm not sure which, here's a governor who, these things, many aspects of the economy are working and are positive. Most people are employed. We're not in negative growth. We're in, but she doesn't get any credit for it, according to polling, pretty consistent across public opinion polls. And actually, the majority of people think we're on the wrong track, which is kind of the bellwether test of how people perceive their state performance. Yeah. So, is it time for, and I don't want to get into a political discussion, you can have that with Kate, but from a business standpoint, is it that it's not fast enough, it's not violent enough, it's the transformation, just people aren't seeing it and feeling it because it is incremental. And the things she may or may not be doing that might set us up for the future won't be seen or felt for years to come.
I actually believe that the governor has worked really hard to paint a positive vision, to give us the confidence, to lay some of the tracks necessary to do this. Has made innovation and entrepreneurship more central, right, than it has been in the past. Has used incentive dollars to try to create a different narrative about the types of companies and the types of jobs that are going to come here. Has focused on education, and to the extent that she can make change, has tried to put us on that right path. Do I think it's bold enough? No, I think it has to be bolder, right? And I think it has to be crisper and clearer in terms of what that vision is
Right.
and where we're coming from. But directionally, I think that Governor Raimondo has done a lot of good work to try to do that. It is hard sledding when you live in an environment that's as cynical as we are, where the history is exactly as you say.
The cynicism
right?
is all caused by being first into every recession and the last
Well,
out
there's
of
some-
every recession.
It's not that there's not reason to be cynical.
Right.
No, I'm a New Englander, I'm a Rhode Islander. I mean, it's not even just New England, cynicism. Rhode Island has its own special version of it here.
Right.
We are best in breed at how to be cynical, but the truth is psychology really matters.
Right.
If we don't start to get more people that are positive and share a vision and a belief that we can get there from
Yeah.
here,
Right.
then you end up in the mess that we're in today. And I think the governor is trying to change, and not just the governor, a lot of leaders. You know what really I look for? Not so much what people are saying publicly.
Yeah.
I look at what people are saying behind closed doors. When somebody calls one of the CEOs here
Yeah.
and says, give me the skinny, should I or shouldn't I make an investment here? Should I hire people here? Should I move a part of my company here? I don't want to know just what the politicians and leaders are saying publicly.
Right.
I want to know what happens in the privacy of those closed conversations, and do we really have people who believe in the place,
Right.
that are putting some of the reputation on the line to make it better, right? How vested are we? And so I don't just point at the public sector leaders. I point at leaders across the state and say, we need more folks that believe in this place, that are willing to put their reputations and their capabilities on the line to actually change it, and to do the bolder things around creating the talent and a workforce that can do this, about helping companies that are already here to be the innovators here so that they can get bigger regionally, nationally, and globally. This is a long-term path that we need to be on, and we need it to happen in the worst possible way because it affects people's lives here. Right, and so we've got a lot more work to do, to get this right. But we all share a part of that, right? Not just pointing
Absolutely.
fingers at
No.
at our publicly elected
absolutely.
leaders to do it.
Let's talk about innovation gone wrong.
Okay.
So I'm going to make a state that all innovation is not good innovation. There was an attempt at innovation, and it's hard to get a beat on what the intent of it was, but technology was taken to maybe make school zones safer, maybe raise revenue, maybe just annoy the crap out of just about everybody. But I think we're up to 11 of these traffic cameras are deployed by any person's measure as randomly as possibly could be. There seems to be no rhyme or reason as to where they're located. And in about 2.5 months have issued 20,000 violations, raising upwards of $2 million. And many are saying that this is just a very disturbing, regressive tax. No public education ahead of time, no announcement beforehand, barely a press release. I think we wrote in an editorial, this is an administration that when they cut a blade of grass at a park, they send out a press release. But yet when they put out safety cameras throughout the city, they forgot to let folks know. Is this an example, I'm going to make the argument, of innovation just gone absolutely haywire?
So, first of all, as you know, I live in Providence. I'm sure one of those speeding tickets is in the mail.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
you might have 11.
So my wife and I can confirm, was it me or was it her, that went through the school zone. I mean, driving, I tried the other day to drive from my home up here on the east side to Olneyville where Biff is.
Yeah,
right.
at 25 miles an hour.
Right, at 20. I mean, I tried to do it at 20. It was excruciating.
Oh, the people will run you off the road and kill you.
Yeah.
But it seems as random an idea as the state putting sensors on the highway without notification and giving everyone a ticket who drives 56 miles an hour. Listen, you give points for trying to find new ways to put more police on the street. This actually had the counter effect. They're taking police officers
off the street
to deal with the overflow.
So
of
now let's
tickets.
talk specifically
Yeah, please.
about the innovation. First of all, one of my favorite all-time quotes, is everybody loves innovation until it affects them.
Yeah, right.
And then not so much. But in this case, I have to say, there's a lot to learn about how the innovation process works. First of all, technology
Yep.
and emerging technologies are here and they can make our lives better. But just because they're here doesn't mean they're going to be used, with the citizens' purpose in mind.
Yeah.
Right? And so here's a classic example of an emerging technology, our ability, the cost is coming down to put the cameras and sensors and tracking and the software that sits behind it
Right.
in place.
Right.
That's a really positive step because these emerging technologies can actually allow us not only to solve, citizen challenges and customer challenges,
Right.
but it could make Rhode Island this laboratory for change that we're modeling for the rest of the country.
Absolutely.
In this particular case, this is an example of lowest hanging fruit. They use the technology in a way that I tend to agree with you. I mean, were they really after solving the public safety challenge around our schools and what was the path to do that, or were they really about trying to raise revenue for the city? Right? I think the technology could add a lot of value. Right? I think if the problem we're trying to solve is safety around our schools, we can use technology in creative ways to do it. Right? I'm not so convinced that this particular deployment of technology, which some third-party vendor came in and put in place,
Right.
so the city didn't have to spend any money up front, right, in order to raise money, seems like a pretty good deal if you're trying to raise money for the city,
Yeah.
right? But not such a good deal if you're one of the 20,000 people, and I'm guessing there's a bunch of repeat offenders.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right, and so we try to cloak these things as being in the public's best interest, but the truth is they're more about who makes money from them or doesn't make money from them. The other aspect of this is even if the model is right, even if the use of technology to make our schools safer, even if that's the right answer, the way to engage people who live in these neighborhoods in creating solutions that they're going to support, even if it costs them some money, because it's doing something important to them. Right. To just announce this, have it out, and have 20,000 tickets in the mail is the wrong way to run that railroad. Right.
There's a case in New York, I think the New York Times had it a few weeks ago, about Waze, the traffic app that shows you short ways to bypass traffic. And they have sent many a person off one of the New York highways through a very specific neighborhood and demoed that neighborhood where there's just backed up traffic and ruined their quality of life. Now they're asking town fathers to change roads to one-ways and things like that. Are we going to constantly see this sometimes jump ahead of technology with adverse impacts, and then humans are going to have to clean up the mess and find a solution to it?
The humans that have to be more proactive about how we use the technologies are those of us who actually live in the community, or go to the school, or go to a healthcare system, for treatment. Too much of this technology has been pushed at us, with institutions, public or private, pushing it at us in ways that they can make more money, as opposed to us pulling the technology to us because it actually solves problems that we have. And we have to be willing to pay for some of that, if we really want that value. Too much push, not enough pull of the technology, coming the other way. We see example after example of this in terms of the way we're using technology. I don't think we're going to slow down, the inexorable, pull of technologies into society to solve problems. The question is whether we're playing an active role or we're just watching this stuff happen to us, right? Like this particular example you're talking about. Take those cameras and the actual capability to be able to see what's going on around a school zone. I mean, imagine if we could take that capability and say, what can we do with that capability that would actually make us safer, that would actually deliver value to the community, and how do we pay for that technology in order to do it?
Not want to maximize the most revenue. Let me jump to another one. I believe you have 1, 2, 3 granddaughters?
I have 3 granddaughters.
Three
yes.
granddaughters,
Yes,
and
I do.
they have birthdays on an annual basis?
They all do. Yes,
They
2 of
do.
them share the same one.
That's right. What are the odds of that?
Imagine that.
And disturbing news, they was already scheduled to close of their 900
Yeah.
stores, 125
Yes, I know.
Toys R Us.
Yeah.
But now it looks like the entire thing will be
Yeah.
liquidated in short order. And
Right.
Toys R Us, the country's leading toy store.
Right.
Today's Monday, tomorrow's a snow day, and you find out that, oh my God, I forgot the twins' birthday, and you need a birthday present now. What do we do in this world of, yes, I'm hooked on Amazon Prime, but that's 2 days later. We're gonna have very limited options in how you buy a toy in the United States of America, let alone all the job losses.
So fortunately, I might be the one who waited until the day before the kid's birthday, to buy the present. But I
Right.
can assure you, my wife isn't. I can assure you, she'd been thinking about that long before the event. But let's talk about retail and the continued disruption of retail, because here's
And this is a huge category.
this is just another example in another category. If
Right.
you're in the business of just selling me access to toys and games that I
Yeah.
can get through multiple channels, including Amazon,
Right.
right? Like, this is not clothing or food. I don't need to squeeze the melon, or try on the clothes. This is a game.
You
trying
need
to
the
get,
game of
right,
life,
right?
right.
And so I just need to get it. So who's going to get it to me efficiently, and who's going to get it to me at the lowest price that I can get
Absolutely.
it for? So if all you do is add value by distributing physical products, and you're the retail business, right? You're going to be disrupted. Right, and we see it over and over and over again. We've had the conversations about retailers here in Rhode Island, right? And this is just the next category up. If you're in the toy distribution business, we're going to talk about Hasbro here in a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? What if you're making these
Yeah.
toys and games? But if your function is retail distribution, convenience and price for a known good, right? You're going to compete with online, and you better have a value proposition, a promise you're making to me, right? So if your promise is it's available and I can swing by the day before and I can get
That
it,
morning
you
on the
got-
way to the birthday
you
party.
got Amazon experimenting with quick turnaround, just in time, shipments of these products, right? And even then, how do you sustain it? I think in the Toys R Us case, they've been hit head on with this. They didn't have a strategy or a new model of a way to engage their customers beyond just the physical distribution of the goods. And they got caught flat-footed, as you know, in a lot of these large retail chains. We saw it here even with Benny's here in Rhode Island.
Absolutely.
A lot of the value is in the real estate, and real estate investment trust in this case with
Yeah.
Toys R Us, where the investors are more interested in the real estate than they are in the ongoing concern that sits on the real estate.
Right.
The consequence of that in our communities is a lot of these retailers are gonna get smaller and go out, and a lot of these big box, large scale, out in the suburbs type retailers, this is real estate that is gonna change hands, and investors are gonna look for the best use, of those assets.
Are we gonna see the death of each and every one of these verticals? We've already lost many of Best Buy's competitors, right?
Right.
Best Buy, depending on the quarter, is struggling or recovering depending on the month or the quarter of the year. Are we gonna start seeing, especially when there's a downturn, whole verticals in which you literally just can't buy that thing that you used to be able to have 20 different options to be able to buy in a 10-mile driving radius, and everything's gonna be online. It's gonna be your only option.
Well, I don't know if it's gonna be our only option. I actually believe the physical nexus, the store, is gonna figure out how to repurpose. So we've talked about Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Right? I think you're gonna see new models and ways to deliver an experience, some of which I can get online, some of which I get because I physically go there. So in the Toys R Us example, right? Like, did they move fast enough to engage families and youth in what play means, what
Yeah.
learning means, and use the physical store stores,
Well,
a way to engage
I bet
us
they
in that.
thought they did.
Well, no, well, mostly what you had were aisles with toys stacked up, right? And,
Oh, well, there were
you know,
end caps where you could play the video
please.
game.
They need to reimagine the experience and the proposition or promise that they're making to customers. I'm not so sure it's the death of, it's clearly being disrupted. It's gonna get resized based on its ability to deliver value to customers that customers are willing to pay for.
All right, let's jump to Hasbro. Hasbro just lost a major distribution point.
Correct.
And stocks took a little tweaks. Hasbro stock was been racing for weeks and weeks, and I think was getting up to about $100 a share. And I think over the last few days, I don't know, I didn't look today, but it's taken a little bit of a haircut,
That's
a couple percentage point. Is that a long-term worry for them, or does that make them begin to rethink? And by the way, do they then start thinking about being the distributor and cut out some of these others? If I can't show it at Toys R Us and get that touch and feel and look at the different My Little Ponies, why can't they then start to think about distributing their own toys?
Well, here's the good news. If you're a fan of Hasbro or you're in Rhode Island and you're focused on the fact that they're headquartered here, right? This is not a new conversation at Hasbro. They have been for a long time now. Brian Goldner's been really strong on this, reimagining what Hasbro is. Are we a traditional manufacturer of toys and games, or are we a storyteller that engages youth and families on multiple platforms, a game, a video, a movie, into a story? Are we storytellers that activate those stories across multiple platforms? That's a very different business model than I'm a traditional toy and game manufacturer. They've been on this journey for some time. They've seen the writing on the wall about what happens if you're solely a manufacturer with single channels.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, they've
yes, I'm
that.
sure I didn't look at their stock price. I'm sure Toys R Us has an impact, but believe me, they are aggressively moving to reposition themselves. They aren't starting today. If you start today, it's probably too late. But they've been working on this for some time. I'm hopeful, and we need them to be successful here in Rhode Island because they employ a lot of those good high wage jobs and career paths are sitting there. So we should be encouraging them. Again, we should make Rhode Island the place where they're able to explore and test those new models that they can be off to the races nationally and globally to do.
They started their own sort of version of a Comic-Con by having HasCom last summer. Should they have a Hasbro store in Rhode Island?
Well, they're going to play with models across the whole continuum. They have a huge business trying to get rights to the media stuff and the movies and the stories, and you're right about the convening. It's all about storytelling, and it's activating the stories, engaging people. So now I want the video game, I want the board game, I want to go see the movie, I want to watch the television program, and you bring stakeholders and advertisers and partners to that storytelling platform. Does that sound like a game company?
No.
Right? It sounds like a very different company, and it's no different than the conversations we've had about CVS, and Aetna, right? If the narrative is we're a retailer that distributes goods that you can get in multiple places, in the end, you can't sustain the value of that. You've got to change that story to be about our capability sets can actually change the value equation for customers. Just the way we just finished talking about those cameras and sensors, that's a capability. It's the power to do something.
Right, absolutely.
It's how you combine and recombine them to change value. What are we tuning that technology and those capability sets for? It's the same discussion. If Toys R Us had done it earlier, maybe they'd be in a different place today, but they stayed to their knitting. We're a retailer, we distribute games and toys, and now they're getting crushed.
Maybe we should change the incentive relative to those traffic cameras in school zones, that if you drive the speed limit, you get a free Hasbro toy as you go by, right? Kind of grab the golden ring, you slow down enough to be able to reach it accordingly. I want to thank you, as always.
Always fun.
We never miss a gosh darn thing. Predictions on tomorrow? Do you have a prediction on the snowstorm?
Well, am I going to go against John Grossi?
He's a weather
I
god.
predict it's going to disrupt the workday tomorrow. I'm pretty certain.
Let me tell you a
I'm
funny,
pretty certain of that.
funny story. When we first launched, John Giorsi gives the Giorsi Factor every day, and he literally, it was like the first or the second day, and he calls me and he says, I'm having trouble with the Giorsi Factor. I'm like, how could you be having trouble? It's named after you. He said, listen, it's complicated. There's going to be a weather front coming through, and it's going to rain at about 11 o'clock in the morning, mostly in Providence. And then it's going to blow through, but it's going to be beautiful in the morning, beautiful in the afternoon, and it makes the Giorsi Factor a little more complicated. And I said, well, listen, I know nothing. You do what you think. So literally, I had a meeting up at the other end of the city at about 11 o'clock. And I go out, literally, as I'm walking in the door, it starts pouring. I finish the meeting, I come back, and it becomes beautiful. I'm like, John Giorsi is a weather god. I will never doubt him ever in our history.
All right, well, go URI and go PC in that order.
Yes.
But still, it's great for Rhode Island that both are in, and let's dance.
And how far do you have URI going in your bracket?
You always put me out there, and I'm always afraid I'm going to jinx it. We should beat Oklahoma, right? We should.
Charles Barkley said it on the.
He did. He
did.
Showed some URI love, didn't he?
or more like Oklahoma hate, I think was his point.
Yeah, maybe. No.
And then you're feeling good about the Duke game as well?
We should win that game, and you know what? If we win that game and we get some of our mojo back, we lost a little bit of it at the end of the season, but if we get some of that mojo back, we will give Duke a tough game. So
we played Duke twice in
Yep.
my lifetime. Tommy Garrick, Silk Owens' team
Yep.
lost by 3 or 4 points. And then prior to that, the Sly Williams team, I believe, lost by 1
Yes.
to the Duke team with
Heartbreaker.
Gene Banks and
Yeah.
Mike Kaminsky that went all the way to the
Bad
finals
memory.
and lost to Kentucky.
Bad memory.
Thank everybody for tuning in today on Business Monday. Thank our friends at Deepwater Wind for all their support. And from the Navigant Credit Union, tomorrow is snow chaos. Tune in. We have a lot going on, starting probably earlier than 3 o'clock, probably with some pop-ups throughout the day, giving some people some insights into everything that's going on related to the storm. Thanks, everybody. Over and out. See you tomorrow.